Welcome again to another Shuttle Sunday. We're getting through the missions. Now we're on to 61A and 61B. You're probably thinking, well, they don't ring a bell. It's okay. There's always something happening in a shuttle mission. There's always something to talk about. So luckily, we have our expert knowledge with us. Say hello to Sawyer Rosenstein, everybody. Say hello, Sawyer.
Hey Chris, how's it going? We
Very
have
well.
a we
It's
have
a
a
shuttle
really
Sunday.
cool show today.
Yeah, sorry, I was totally interrupting you there. It's a Shuttle Sunday. By the way, we do this live. I said it's at the start of every Shuttle Sunday. We do this live on Space Coast Live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We also record it. So many people tend to watch the recording rather than live, but we have quite a big audience in, I must say, on Space Coast Live for this Shuttle Sunday. So there's a lot of interest, and that's good to see because it is very important to remember the history of spaceflight. And a lot of the shuttle programs, lessons learned, are being applied to this day, especially with some of the considerations that take place with the commercial crew, as we've seen just recently with Bill Nelson's comments and references to the two disasters, which unfortunately the first one we're getting closer and closer to now, because this is Challenger's last flight, which was a success. This is 61A. This is the last time Challenger completed a mission. The next mission after this was 51L, where Challenger was lost, along with 7 crew members. More importantly, 7 crew members, I should say. So yeah, we're going to get on to the grim part of the space shuttle program, but it's important to recognise every single aspect, the successes and the failures. The failures being the hardest lessons you could even appreciate because of the disasters associated with them. But we do have a lot of fun things to talk about before then, starting with 61A. So, how about, Sawyer, we get into some of the prep missions and prep photographs of this because there's quite a lot of cool things, starting with the logo. There we go.
Yes.
I know you like talking about logos, Sawyer, so go for it.
I don't know what it is, but I just find the mission patches really cool. So, this one represents the record number of people with 8 astronauts launching and landing, the only mission in the shuttle program to launch and land with 8 crew members. Obviously, you got the names around it. You can see inside, highlighted in red, a big science module, Space Lab, designed and built by West Germany. You also then have all of the international insignias there, and you'll notice that there is the American flag, there is the German flag, and only one person there has an ESA logo next to their name. That's because that marks the first time that a Dutch person flew into space, and rather than giving them their own flag, they gave them the ESA logo.
Very nice. It is a beautiful patch. Again, I tend to go back over the old historical shuttle patches and go, they were all just superb. You could go through them. I think the NRO still win on patch design, along with our very own Pauline, because I'm not even joking, Pauline's patches are amazing designs for Starship. But these old shuttle patches are absolutely beautiful. I think they're just very simple but beautiful, if we can say it that way. It tells you a lot of things as well. As sorry, I was just intimating there. It was also called the Deutschland One, the D1 mission as well, because this is very European, as intimated by Sawyer there. The German flag on there, but there's also a Dutch astronaut who I know from a lot of my Dutch community members. He's an absolute folk hero. So we're going to go through that because we'll show the crew. I'm going to show a few more patches, I believe. One here which is more related to the Deutschland 1 mission element of this. And it does actually show you in this patch the size of the module in the back of the cargo bay inside Challenger there. So it gives you a real good sense of scale because it was no small feat to put that in the back of the orbiter, but it almost made it like a mini space station, didn't it, Sawyer?
It really did. I mean, you could see it's got the tunnel going out where the airlock is, all the way into the giant module. It took 5 years to assemble. It was assembled by MBB Airno and cost about $175 million to build.
We do have another secret little Easter egg of a patch here. I don't know if you've seen this one, Sawyer. I have an explanation from one of our Dutch members who provided it. Let's bring it there. There we go. That is actually a patch that was created. I'm going to read out what Woods 170, who's one of our L2
What?
members. Yeah, one minor incident during STS-61-A was an accidental release of a fly from the space lab. Science astronaut Wubu forgot to close the miniature cage on the feeding of one of the flies. The fly made it onto the flight deck, where it was spotted by Commander Hartsfield, sitting on one of the cockpit CRTs, which is the display units. Mission Control named the fly Willie. It has never been seen again and probably ended up being sucked into the air filtering system. After the incident, the photo lab of the German Space Agency issued this picture shown here, a cross between a shuttle orbiter and a fly to celebrate the incident. There we go. Little Easter egg for you all there.
The flight deck.
Oh dear. Yeah, it's opened up a pun opportunity.
Of course.
I
But
love
I've never seen
this.
that before. That was really cool.
Yeah, there we go. That's one of our L2 members. That's what we tend to do in L2. A lot of these photographs, you'll have seen, we obviously launch photographs. They tend to be historical on nasa.gov, but a lot of the photographs will be provided by our members or scanned in from photographs and then made digital versions into the L2 areas. That's why we have the nice big collections where you get a collection of everything. And I think that's important because that means it'll be there forever as long as the internet lives, which hopefully will be for a long time to come yet. This is a nice cross section of the hub. Of the lab, I should say, really shows you how many. If you can actually compare these racks with the ones on the ISS, because that's what the ISS really is. It's several of these modules placed together, and they've all got racks. They've all got science experiments, and that's why I call it the National Laboratory in Space, because it literally is full of labs, and it is a quite beautiful cross section there, hand drawn, by the way. This is before computer graphics.
Yep. And there's some really interesting ones there too. I mean, you've got uh they're all mostly German names. The Werkstofflaber, the Prosekammer, the Biowissenschaften. But what I find really cool is the sled in the bottom right there. They literally had a vestibular sled to test out how the inner ear and the body worked that used programming to basically throw the astronaut around left and right on that little rack.
Let's try and zoom in on that. I'm just trying to work out how to zoom in it. There we go. Little rail car almost, isn't it? It's
Pretty
basically.
much.
I'm sure I've got photographs of that in the actual collection as well. I might bring up the thread because I actually we had about 500, well, 200 or 300 photographs. I thought, well, I'm not going to download every single one. We'd be here for like 18 hours doing a Shuttle Sunday show, which some people would be very fine with. But I actually do know we've got some. So I'll try and bring them up. Also, let's try and go backwards a little bit. Here we go. There's the crew. Here's some of the crew, in fact. 6 members of the crew there with their own little shuttle model. I would love to know what happened to these models. Because I'm sure they're out there somewhere, but just the fact that they could say, well, this was ours, which we took the photograph with. I wonder if one of the astronauts got to keep it. That'd be very nice.
That would be cool. And again, you see, you're right how specific that one is with the actual module in the back there.
Yeah, unlike most crew photographs, which always have the Columbia model behind them, regardless of what orbiter they're flying on and what mission they're flying on, that always seems to got brought out at JSC for the photo opportunities. In fun fact, by the way, 61-B has lots of crew photographs. They went to town with dressing up for their crew uniforms and what have you. I'll show you when we get to that mission. There's the installation inside the OPF, which I think is quite rare to see this photograph because normally you only see OPF photographs where you can't see too much because of the amount of scaffolding and platforms they have surrounding the orbiter, but they obviously had a special technique for installing this laboratory where they had to remove most of the platform so they could actually bring it in and install it into the cargo bay. Zoom in there. You can see there, that's the back. They're the aft windows of the orbiter. This is so. I've seen enough photographs in the OPF that is quite rare to be able to see that. And there's the actual hatch as well, which would lead them into the funnel, which would take tunnel, which would take them into the same thing, isn't it?
Pretty fun
Take
tunnel.
them into this, yeah, the fun tunnel. And we've got the crew photograph. There we go with the patch, which is always beautiful to see. I do have one more I can bring up as well, which is a lovely 80s style drawing. This is by the German Space Agency, and this is great because it shows scale. Now, a lot of people don't understand the scale of a shuttle, and that's not being sarcastic or anything like that. I was one of the same people originally who didn't understand that the orbiter, the way it looks, you think, okay, there's a flight deck, and that's only for the crew, and you're thinking, well, all this is for cargo bay. It's actually 2 decks. There's 2 decks, mid deck there and a flight deck there. And on the flight deck, they can look out those aft windows I just showed you. And then you can see the laboratory in the back. And you can see it. There's a lot of space there. It's quite surprising how much space, how much volume, how much pressurized volume they have to work with there. So it must have been something at the time when they proposed it, saying, "Look, the space shuttle is going to be launching and retrieving satellites. Okay, big deal. Oh, but we can also put a laboratory in the back and do microgravity research. Oh, interesting. It's where shuttle was starting to show some of its capabilities. Although by then they'd realised they were going to get nowhere near the flight cadence they promised. So it was kind of pros and cons.
And I love in particular with this mission, how this is basically not a NASA mission for the most part. NASA was responsible for the space shuttle part, how it functions, how it flies. That was pretty much Mission Control Houston's role. The rest of it, all of the science experiments, all of that side working with the crew resources, that was controlled from Overpfaffen, I believe is how it's pronounced, or Overpfaffenhofen in Germany, the German operations center, controlling all the science, all the experiments, with the crews working in their blue and red teams.
I wonder if we have. Again, we didn't exactly advertise it as European mission. We just put the Challenger photograph up there and the two mission names of the two missions we're covering. I wonder if it actually did anyway gravitate towards any Germans or Dutch in our community to watch this. There's quite a lot of people watching Space Coast Live, surprising amount. Normally, the biggest amount of views is from the recorded video, but there's a lot of people in right now. If you're from the Netherlands or Germany, put your hand up in chat. I'd be interested to see if it has gravitated towards those people.
Yeah.
As we
Also,
would.
I should say, whenever I say Germany, I'm generalizing. At the time, this was West Germany when Germany was
Oh
still
yeah,
split.
before David Hasselhoff reunified the country. I bring it up every single time.
Mr.
People of
Hasselhoff,
my
tear down this wall.
yeah, well, it was. I've been looking for Freedom song where he sung across the Berlin Wall, and he apparently claimed he was the reason that the reunified. Long story short, if you're from my era, you'll understand the reference. There's a lot. Hey, look at this.
Wow.
Yeah. So there we go. I wonder if they're in for Rubu or they're just basically NSF fans. That's interesting. We've got a Belgian one just joining in. Hi, Niles. Right. So launch photographs. I'm going to start with a sad one, right? Because I mentioned at the start of the show, we are getting closer and closer to 51L. This being the last successful flight of Challenger. And what was quite routine was the next astronauts to fly would watch the one before. So in this case, Christy McAuliffe and Barbara Morgan were there. Barbara Morgan was Christy McAuliffe's backup. So they're both watching Challenger's launch, ready for their launch, with Krista being obviously primary. And this is quite a famous photograph because Krista's obviously enjoying watching the launch. And when Challenger launched again, she was lost on it. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. It's really kind of sad. But also, what do you think, Sawyer? I find this sad, but also, you know, at least we can celebrate her life. And she got to get so deeply involved in the program to the point that she was going to launches and stuff like that. So she would have not been blind to the risks because watching a shuttle launch will make you fully aware of how risky it is.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm glad they got to see the success, Krista and Barbara there. But yeah, deep down they know the risk, but I don't think they were thinking of it as they're watching that launch. I think
Yeah,
they're
and
probably imagining being on instead. But yeah,
it gets even more sad because Barbara Morgan was doing the same thing, watching 51L's launch from top of a TV truck. And like a lot of people at the time, the video will actually show it on the 51L Shuttle Sunday, which is going to be horrendous, but we're going to have to do it. We'll show Barbara celebrating what was at the time the actual breakup because a lot of people, because of the angle of the launch, could not see that obviously, and you don't obviously count the seconds. So a lot of people were thinking it was SRB separation until seconds later when they realised it was wrong. And you'll hear someone on the ground shouting RTLS, RTLS, because they were thinking the orbiter was okay still. It was obviously going wrong, but they thought the orbiter was going to try and do a return to launch site abort, and then it just got worse and worse and worse. But yeah, you could see the change of emotions. It's quite dramatic, and Barbara Morgan's in that video, so that's why I was
yeah,
just mentioning it there. I don't want to labour on this too much. You know what I mean?
yeah. Because she would later fly on STS-118, becoming the first educator in space.
Yeah.
And yes, I did meet her. She's fantastic, Barbara.
Well, she's an astronaut, so of course you've met her, Sawyer. I think we need a list of the astronauts you've not met. That might save time because
I
there
do have
can't
an
be many.
active list of astronauts that I've met. Just saying.
Way. Well, I don't blame you. Why not? This is a great view of the launch from high up above, 39A, and you can see the roll program there. So they launch straight up and do a roll program, go onto the right azimuth for launch, and it's just amazing. I'm going to try and zoom in as far as I can. That there's 8 humans on that dot with a fire behind them, riding a fireball to space. Absolutely never get bored of that. And a close-up photograph, beautiful again.
Oh, love the shots with the nature in it.
Yeah, you can see the shock diamonds of the RS-25s. Really is. I mean, I've said it to people who aren't really into space flight. You know, you'll show them a shuttle launch photograph, and I'm actually getting away with that now with Starship, by the way, because Starship is just dramatically beautiful. But I think the shuttle is so iconic. It's even why Hollywood, still to this day, love bringing shuttle in, even though it's retired over 10 years ago. They still bring shuttle into their movies. It's like it's just so iconic that it kind of like they're probably thinking, well, we know it's retired, but it's too visually iconic not to have it in the movie. We can't go putting a Falcon 9 in there. People won't know what it is, which is sad, but it's true, isn't it? So that's why the shuttle still is in Hollywood movies.
I mean, it flew for 30 years, so that was the vehicle to space for 30 straight years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. It's embedded into so many people's psyches now. Also, that's the thing we use for the thumbnail. I asked Brady, is there any way we can make this work for the thumbnail, please? Because it's my favourite one. Yes. I'm Brady. I'm a magic with Photoshop. So, you got the RS-25s there. You got the OMS pods there. They're the engines that fire in space. They are used for orbital manoeuvring and for the deorbit burn. And you got your 2 big SRBs there. No observation seen on these ones. Hey, there we go. Yes, too soon. Sorry, Vulcan. And the mission itself, got a few photographs from the mission. I wonder if I did actually take one of the reference to the little cart thing. If not, I will drag one out of L2.
Also, you
But
can
that
see you've
is,
got the little the garbage can looking thing there on the right. You've got one of the getaway specials there, the gas little canisters that they have. Those, by the way, were like the precursor to CubeSats that we have now, where you could, for relatively cheap, put an experiment on there and have them deploy it. And that one, I believe, was a relay satellite used to track oceanography. The Global Low Orbiting Message Relay Satellite, GLOMER.
very nice. And there's the tunnel, which I called a funnel earlier, which leads from the mid-deck, sorry, my mistake, the mid-deck, down hatch, which the hatch they would use for EVAs and things like that. So they'd modified it to have the tunnel connected to it, and they would go down that. Not unlike when you see people ingress in the ISS from docked Crew Dragons. You could see them just going through a funnel, kind of like I'm going to keep saying the word because I think
I
it's
like
fun.
it now.
I
I'm
do,
stick
yeah.
with it. Little.
It's working for me now, yeah. I wonder what that is. Is that actually cameras or windows or something?
Potentially part of an experiment. I'm looking through the experiment list in the 85 press release, and I don't see anything for that specifically.
No,
But
it
it could
just
be.
caught my eye. Yeah, I didn't even see that when I was downloading it. It just caught my eye when I was zooming around. Because we see the patches, obviously they make sense, but this is different to me. So that's interesting. That's something we can. By the way, we have a live chat right now, so we're interactive. So if you've got any questions, do out in a space flight, and then your question, and we'll answer it between the videos. Because what we'll do is we'll show a few more photographs, we'll show the mission video presented by the astronauts themselves, take some questions, move on to 61B. So if you've got any questions, throw them in chat, and we'll take them and we'll try and answer them best we can. But also, if you're watching the recorded video, we do have a few shuttle, I presume engineers, because the knowledge is amazing, who actually do watch the videos back and add their own notes. Do not be shy to do that. I will read the comments. So absolutely add your comments to the video that's recorded, and it'll be on the channel within about 3 or 4 hours of the show ending. So that way you can post comments in there as well. By all means. It's not a question of just please post comments. We're absolutely fascinated to learn as much as we possibly can. And people who are watching this show and listening to us talk will benefit even more by people providing their own comments to the video in the actual YouTube channel itself. So it works for everybody that way. Then we've got a nice little historical collection of shuttle videos, which is
What
always
about
pleasing.
part of the Navex experiment? That's the only thing I could think
Oh,
of.
that could be it then. Yeah.
Navex, by the way, was a payload developing and testing of a precise clock synchronization, a method for precise one-way distance measurement and position determination.
Very nice. More little bows to the shuttle mission. Yes, there were so many crew photographs from on board.
Oh my
And I thought,
gosh,
well, I'm not downloading them all. But then I saw this
that's
one. I
not
thought, I'm
horrifying.
definitely downloading this. Yep, they're a fun crew. There's
I mean,
always
that was
some fun
Halloween.
photographs.
That's
Oh,
probably
is
why.
that?
'Cause this launched October 30th, so this was probably taken
Oh,
October 31st.
well, that's a unique way of doing Halloween.
Yeah, horrifying way.
Yeah, absolutely. There we got more from the cargo bay. There we go.
By the way, someone called it Michael Myers from Timu, and I love it.
Oh, you know what? Right, I'm gonna have to download one. Hang on, let me find one.
Uh-oh.
I've definitely got loads of these crew photographs on board. So bear with me while I literally grab one out of L2. Leak! Stop repeating leak. So many photographs. We've got like hundreds and hundreds. So bear with me while I go through these. I will find a good example of one. Bear with me while I
Well,
multitask, which is
while you do
never
that,
fun.
I can
Yes?
at least I did see a question and a couple of people saying, "Why are they so out of order and what's with the numbering?" Just for those who aren't aware, the numbering system was something that was put in place after they had decided, you know what, we're going to try launching from two coasts, from the East Coast at the Cape and the West Coast at Vandenberg. So the 6 is the fiscal year of the mission, so that would have been 86 for the fiscal part. The 1 being the coast, so in this case, that was going to be from the East Coast. 2 would have been Vandenberg if that ever happened. And then the letter is basically of that fiscal year, what numbered mission it was on the schedule. So the first one that they had planned for the fiscal year of 1986 was 61A. And of course, they went out of order because it was just, hey, that's when we planned it versus here's the actual order in which it launches.
Nice. I've decided to not download each individual photograph of this collection and just leak L2 because that's my privilege. And literally, I'm going to put the photographs in here because there's so many of them. I thought this is great. Look at this.
Is that the sled?
Yes,
Oh, I love
it
it.
really is interesting. So I'm just going to go through some of these photographs here. So we've got so many, it's ridiculous. That it looks like a torture contraption.
I mean, that's good vestibular testing, I guess. Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's also used as a war torture device.
I think some of these are training as well. I've noticed there's a few from the ground where they're doing some training on the ground.
Yeah, the lack of floating.
Yeah, that's obviously the German engineers involved there. Yep, loads of training ones there. But that just shows you how much is involved in this laboratory. It's really quite interesting. Right, let's go on to a few landing photographs and we'll do the video because
Yep.
there's some beautiful landing
So you can see
photographs here.
Guy Bluford there too, the first African American in space, and as a result, the first African American to fly into space twice.
There we
He
go.
would fly 4 times total, but this was flight number 2.
Again, this is the 80s, and I keep when Jack's on, and Jack's very busy today with Starbase for obvious reasons. There's a lot going on with Starship. Jack, I would always go to Jack about the photographs, but Sawyer, you are a photographer in your own right.
Thank
So
you.
it's almost disingenuous that I take all the photograph questions to Jack, but this time I have the opportunity to ask you why, how, are 80s cameras to me as good as the cameras today that cost so much money with all these lenses? Is it just
There's
describe it to me?
there's something unique about film. I don't know exactly
Mm,
what it is, but as much as there's the fanciness with the digital sensors and things like that, there's something about the way that you can just coat a piece of film with just the right material to make it look so nice that when it does get exposed with that light, it's so crisp and sharp. And it seems like there's less noise in a way, and what noise is there kind of just adds to detail. That's just my thoughts on it.
See, even I think some of these have been scanned. I really do think on our shuttle collection, sometimes the last page of photograph uploads are the ones we've not had in the collection already. And it's people who have found the photograph in their loft and they've put it into a scanner and digitalized it and uploaded it for us. And I've got a funny feeling this is one of them. And that just makes it even more impressive because the original itself must have been absolutely beautiful. But look at the state of Challenger's nose here. What's going on there? Sorry, can you
Well,
remember?
yeah, that was the nose wheel steering test that they also did. Those, that looks like some of the thruster testing that may have, shot upwards and stained a little bit. But they actually did nose wheel steering testing for this for the first time for landing. They had a computerized system that used the brakes to do actuators to basically develop the ability to nose steer. But as for
There we go.
that, wow.
Yeah, because they always said that. Well, first of all, you've got the thrusters here, like the forward RCS. That would always be firing in that kind of direction, especially if they were doing certain burns. And you'd imagine, sir, with a mission like this, which is very orbital, where they're basically just on orbit and they're constantly trying to keep the orbiter in the right orientation for heating, for power, for things like the freon loops cooling out. There's so much involved. They would be flying around in all different kind of orientations. It was amazing watching a live NASA TV shuttle mission because you could have it 24/7 for a start, which is always great. Something you don't get today. And you'd see mission control Houston, where the orientation of the orbiter would always be changing around and using the thrusters to change around. It was really impressive.
But yeah, that looks like hydrazine remnants.
Yeah, it's a bit mucky, but we have some very cool landing photographs here before I go to the video. So again, that's just beautiful. It
Oh,
really is. Oh, and there's
right
this
at
landing
touchstone.
convoy. Look,
Oh, you can see him in the distance. Yep.
yeah. You know what? Sorry, I was downloading all these photographs like a madman because there's so many of them that I'm now spotting things for the first time just by just doing this and zooming around. This is really cool because the shuttle landing convoy is a shuttle Sunday in itself, I would say.
Oh
They
yeah.
were a ragtag fleet of the weirdest looking trucks you could ever even dream of. I mean, they were wacky. There was like a fan truck which had like the massive fan that rotated at a crazy speed that was almost like a special thing for a truck van at the time. You've got the purge vans with their big like elephant trunks and what have you. It was a ragtag fleet of absolutely crazy vehicles, and I was fascinated by it. We've actually got a lot of documentation on this, so maybe Sawyer, if we get through all these missions and we do things like the retirement I want to do the retirement days because when Endeavour was flying off to California, 1 million people turned out on the West Coast just to watch the flyover with the SCA, and it took Endeavour over the Golden Gate Bridge, over the Hollywood sign, over the observatory, all the
Yep.
things you see in GTA. It's my only reference to LA.
Yeah, Los Santos, LA, close enough.
Yeah, it really is. It's absolutely. I reckon that's a short Sunday in itself.
Which
Anyway,
I have tons of photos that I could get you, Chris, also for Enterprise's arrival because I was at JFK Airport as a guest speaker when Enterprise landed.
we'll have to get Alicia on as a guest. I did see someone in chat asking if we can get Chris G on for a Shuttle Sunday. I do want to work on that. We don't want to. Chris G has only been working at SpaceX for a year or so now. Let him just bed in and get his career sorted so that he's all happy before we start asking if can we have Chris G back for a bit, which might be
Speaking of the
bad,
SCA,
yeah, too soon. Yeah,
is that a shot of the SCA?
yes, it is.
The shuttle carrier aircraft. Love it.
Oh, I've got more. Sorry, got more.
Oh,
Here we
you
go.
tease. You tease.
Yeah. But yeah, Chris G, we
Wow.
will try and get him on because obviously he's not talking about SpaceX. He won't be breaking his NDA. So we'll obviously have a word and see what we can do with that. It is something I'd love to do, though. Right. Anyway, more. I've got more, sorry. There's the back, which covers the
Mhm.
engines. That's for the aerodynamics, isn't it? It's basically like an aero shell that they install over the engines so that it provides less naughty drag to the SCA.
Yeah, the tail cone is not the prettiest, but it gets the job done.
We've got more. Again, imagine if we were NSF, well, we want to work for the internet at the time, but imagine if the shuttle was still flying. Again, probably not a great idea either, but we'd be able to do so much amazing coverage. Can you imagine Jack filming SCA takeoffs and landings? He'd be like in his element.
Oh, it's again, that's one of those sights to see that giant plane with a shuttle on it. It's oh, it's hard to describe. It's unreal to think that that thing actually flies. Both seeing it in photos and then again, fortunately seeing it with Enterprise was just wow.
Yeah. It's stuck in my head for some reason. It seems like a completely normal thing now, but I guarantee you, if anyone in this chat right now just took a screenshot right now and showed it to a friend who has no knowledge of shuttle or rockets or whatever, they'd go, "Why is that plane on the plane?" It's like it really is quite surreal. But I'm just so used to it now. By the way, look at that. That's one of those machine guns that happen to have a plane involved as well, isn't it?
Oh wow.
Awesome.
Need
And we're
need
back to
Jack's
landing.
expertise on exactly which jet that is, although I'm sure Chad will come in with it.
Shuttle, no. Yeah. There's a crew coming off. A little bit in reverse. An A10 Warthog. There we go.
Yep.
Cool. Right, so we've gone through the photographs. How about we go and show the video presented by the crew? Again, these videos are very long, so you'll see me skipping through a bit. I've watched the video before, so I know which parts to skip because it can go on forever. But I'm going to show this. The launch and the landing are obviously the main thing, especially when the crew are talking about the experience on it. I always find that really fascinating, the crew talking about their experience of the launch and landing, because it was very dynamic for the space shuttle, especially launch. So those parts I'll definitely keep running, and a lot of the crew experiments I'll just skip through a little bit. So don't think the video's broken. It's just me skipping and being a terrible editor. Bear with me. Here we go.
Okay, I'll pick it up at this point. There was no doubt at the time of launch we were ready to fly. However, there was one question in our minds the last few days before the launch, and that was the weather, because Hurricane Juan was turning around in the Gulf, going one way and then another, and never actually threatened the launch. However, we were under the influence of that hurricane, and some spiral bands of weather had passed by the Cape. I guess the night before launch, we had some thunderstorms around Florida, which is usually a good omen for good weather the next day. And sure enough, the next day when we got out there, it was perfectly clear when we climbed in the vehicle, and I think there were just a few scattered clouds inland a little ways by the time we launched. We launched right on time, 12 o'clock, straight up. And as shuttle launches go, it was, I guess, kind of a ho-hum launch. Everything was nominal and worked just as it should. For anybody who rides through it, I don't think it's very ho-hum. Even a nominal launch is pretty exciting. But the important thing is that everything worked quite well. All the systems worked very well and put us into the orbit that we desired to go into. The roll maneuver off the launch pads considerably larger on one of these missions, because instead of flying due east from the Cape, we had northeast up the coast. So it was probably to a spectator on the ground, it looked impressive. It was a 135-degree roll. First stage was a normal first stage, duration of which was 2 minutes until the solid rockets burned out, at which time that they were kicked off. Here's a good scene of solid rocket booster separation. And for the next 6.5 minutes, we monitored systems, and everything, as I said before, worked fine. I'm not sure what it looks like out the window. I took a couple of peeks, but all the rest of the time, my eyes were on the gauges all the way through ascent, and never saw anything anomalous at all. The post-insertion timeline went very well, got the payload bay doors open, and we were on or ahead of the timeline. And then 2 hours into the mission, we were into Space Lab activation, which Bonnie will talk about.
We started right on time with activation. Steve and I got the lab powered up. We got down to the door, the hatch, about 3:15, 3:30. Once I got into the tunnel, it was just like training. Very familiar. The inner hatch, tunnel hatch, opened very easily, buckled down. Getting into the lab was just like going into the trainer. In fact, I was amazed at how familiar everything seemed. And we started right down the timeline. Also, being a little bit of an ambitious flight, not only did we start the rest of the activation there, which we had another hour to do, but also started right into experiments. Vubo, Reinhardt, Ernst, and Guy all came in and started setting up. Towards the end of activation, then Ernst and Guy went to bed. The red shift started sleeping fairly early.
And looking on our Spock, which gave us our position over the Earth, and then one taking pictures, or the one that was using Spock would also be taking pictures. We use a 16 millimeter to take these shots of western United States. This gives a nice view of essentially what we saw, the curvature of the Earth, about the same movement that you saw on that photo. When we were in a gravity gradient mode, we used the overhead windows primarily. When we were in a ZLV attitude, we used the forward windows to get a panoramic view, and then used the overhead windows, which were looking straight down, to take some very detailed Earth shots. This is another view of the western United States. Here you see Salt Lake. To the south of it is Lake Provo, and you're just starting to see the western part of the mountains in central, west central United States.
If the acceleration profile is different. Ernst is here standing in front of the rotating domes, that is with colored dot marked dome, and the illusion he gets by looking into it is being floating around the axis, and you see what his sensations are by just looking in the eye and seeing a rotatory nystagmus motion of the cell. Here is a simple, nice experiment, free-floating Wubo. Ask me where up and where down is, and I try to point where up is, and he stops me someplace, and then he asks me, where is your up? And you see, in this moment, I just say I cannot tell anymore, because we prove with this experiment that there's no mechanism, no integrating mechanisms that can tell you as a subject what happened to you motion-wise.
The other facilities that caused a little bit troubles at the beginning of the mission, but we did some kind of IFM that worked out successfully.
Okay, we're back here to biology about the other third, and this was the first flight which showed such a systematic large biology research. Here we feed the flies, which got a new tray of nutrition each day, and already there we found an absolutely new phenomenon, that is that flies in space do not know where to put their eggs. They don't put their eggs on the feeding tray all the time, and actually the eggs which are not put there have already shown to be abnormal and relatively different from the ground. Many results, very previous results we have from this research we did on different cells and bacteria, and it's extremely interesting to see what will come out there.
Extremely well throughout the whole mission, and the team is putting the food on the food tray, and in this scene you can see the three of the crew members have lodged themselves down in various positions in the middeck with their individual food trays eating the meals. And you'll find
on Earth, a normal spring, then the spring force has to be at least that great, that large, that it can carry its own weight. If you go in zero G, then you can adjust both qualities in a way that the motion, the propagation of waves along a spring happens very, very slowly. So we carried a few springs with us and did some experiments. It looks as if we would have had a lot of time, but I have to tell you that most of these demonstration experiments have been done the last night, where we rushed through, and sure, we took a few pictures, but you see, I managed finally to get some of these fundamental oscillation in springs, and this is something when you really study them, gives you a nice insight, because you cannot do this on Earth.
Putting down all the experiments and putting stuff away, and the last day was really quite a busy day trying to get the lab in order before shutting it down and proceeding home. And in these scenes here, you can see both Ernst and myself short of doing the last little item, shutting down the space lab.
Well, the closeout went remarkably fast and remarkably well. I was really pleased with it. We had an uneventful entry. Here we see the tracking cameras at Edwards picking us up in the turn around the heading alignment circle at somewhere around 40,000 feet. I took manual control of the spacecraft at just under Mach 0.9 after the Mach buffet. The bird handles real well. It flies just as nicely as Discovery and Columbia did. I was well pleased with the handling qualities. here I'm about to roll out on final. We're up, I guess, about 10,000 feet at this point. Got right on the desired glide slope and brought it in towards the landing. Steve did his job for us and got the wheels down. That's always a very important part of the mission. But the weather was just as forecast. It was a beautiful day. It was calm, a little bit of haze layer under 500 feet. We were targeted for a 195-knot touchdown. I had it pretty well set up and liked what I had and didn't want to try to make a last-minute adjustment. So we touched down just about 200 knots, maybe a knot or two over. Very smooth touchdown, 185 knots. Steve called for lowering the nose, which we brought on down. As you know, we had a nose wheel steering test to do on this flight. Right after touchdown, I put in a pedal input to make a slight turn to the left, then a slight turn to the right. We made an excursion. I think they measured it afterwards of 31 feet, which was just about what they wanted. And then put the brakes on at 120 on Steve's call, and then did some more steering.
So there we go. Got some fun clips in that video there showing the Mission 61A. We do have some questions, and I'm going to go back to some of the questions. One is from Outro, asks, is that the same kind of arm on the ISS? No, same design, but the orbiters had their own robotic arms, and also the OBSS, which was later added after Columbia's loss as a way of checking the TPS on the orbiter. The OBSS actually was then left on the ISS. The ISS can use that as an extension arm if they ever used it. I don't think they ever opted for it, and I don't think it can be used anymore because I think it's probably just been left there too long now. But the ISS has its own kind of arm as well, which is the SSRMS, which is the Space Station Remote Manipulator System. So that's got its own kind of arm, and there'll be a kind of arm 3 for the Gateway, if the Gateway ever gets built, which is going to be built by the same people.
Yeah, also the SSRMS, the Space Station 1 Canadarm2, can crawl itself across the station. It has two ends. It can literally move across the truss segments to different parts.
We need a Space Station Sunday. That's what we need.
I think we get to that in the later shuttle missions, technically.
Kind of, yeah, because it was literally the Space Shuttle assembled the ISS.
Yep.
It was its basically role, and that's why after Columbia, they could have easily said, that's it, retire the fleet. That was, we can't risk it again because that was always a risk of losing another one. But they said, well, the risk is we don't complete the ISS then. And the ISS was just that important that they took the 2-year stand down and got the designs in to make it safer as possible, still with the risks. There was always still the risks. But they had the objective of it being completely the ISS assembly, and then they added the Hubble mission in on top of that later with loads of caveats. We can go through STS-400 and the launch on need rescue by Endeavour, if required, of Atlantis during STS-125. Rabbit hole time, but yep, that was the final salvo of shuttle missions. Booster 4, what happened to the SCA after the shuttle retired? Did it get scrapped? There's 2 of them, 905 and 911. And Sawyer, where do they have those 2 former SCAs now? They're not being scrapped.
Correct. NASA 905 is currently on display at Mission Control, well, not Mission Control, at Johnson Space Center, Houston, at their visitor complex there, with one of the model orbiters on top. As for where NASA's 911 went, I'm not entirely sure where that is at the moment.
I think it's still parked up in California. I remember Jack returned to California once, said he'd go and try and get some photographs of it. So I think it might still be there.
Joe Davies Heritage Air Park is where that one's located in California.
There we go. I do like it when I'm kind of right. Without any specific any absolute dead details. Also on the actual SCAs, what did they have on the 747s, which is the SCAs? And I mean, did they have passenger seats? No, they didn't. They were gutted out internally. We need to have Nathan Moller, who worked pretty much the first photojournalist we had at NSF back way before we had a channel, and we're talking back in the early days of the actual site itself. And he did a video tour talking to the pilot as well, and going around the inside of the SCA, and it looks like a cargo plane inside. It is gutted out. It really is gutted out, apart from the cockpit, which has a lot of the old 747 style controls with like where you could have 3 people in the cockpit. So that would
And
be
you
a
can go
fascinating
inside
one
of
to
it
show.
also in Houston.
Oh, there we go then, yeah. And I wonder if it is showing the gutted out interior because all the seats were taken out. It was they were both former American airline jets, so they were former passenger jets, but they did gut them out before they took up their role with the shuttle. How about we move on to the next mission?
Let's do it.
61B. Here we go. Let's get the mission patch up. Sawyer, would you like to talk about this one?
Honestly, very boring mission patch, if we're being brutally honest. Even in the official press release of here's what the mission's about on it, it basically just said that Insignia represents their November 1985 mission aboard Atlantis, depicted in Earth orbit, making its second flight. That's literally all it says. And then the names, the one of note being, you'll notice the Mexican flag for one of the Mexican crew members.
Speaking of which. Hey, and there's Columbia. There's the model of Columbia again, every single
Oh my
time.
gosh.
Yeah.
That's Atlantis, definitely.
Yeah. But that's a nice crew photograph. We have, speaking of crew photographs, here we go. Let's go back. Bear with me while I scroll right to the start. 1 second. Whoops. Too fast. There we go. That's a normal crew photograph. That makes perfect sense. But as always, and not always did we get to see them, we did in the latter missions, but they would also dress up in actual uniforms because a lot of the military personnel and the civilians would just dress up in their nice dinner type wear to look presentable. That's a terrible thing to say, but you know what I mean. Basically, that was their official kind of like their dress uniform.
Also
And then you had,
interesting how they
yes,
chose which crew members to be in that. You've got, the crew of 5, and then there were 2 additional people who weren't in those other photos. And also look
yeah.
at the mission patch in the back right. It's missing those 2 bottom names.
Oh
So it's only
yes,
showing the 5 in the inner circle.
nice spot there, Sawyer.
I just noticed that.
Yeah, there we go. There we are. There we got we got the entire crew in there, including the EVA setups because there were 2 EVAs there. EVAs, spacewalkers.
Yep.
And then we had the fun one. There's always a fun one. So that's Clockwork Orange for some reason. He's a trucker. They're construction workers. He's a Mexican astronaut. Would you have guessed he's the Mexican astronaut?
No, that's not stereotypical at all.
No, not at all. He looks overjoyed by the suggestion he should look as Mexican as possible for this photo opportunity, doesn't he?
Yeah, here, have a sombrero and have part of a poncho. Enjoy.
Ace Construction Company. Ace Construction would be used a lot, by the way, in a lot of these EVAs where they were doing construction techniques. It was always Ace. It was like probably the one who NASA could use.
And guess where one of the satellites is launching for?
I wonder.
Huh. What country or continent could that be?
He's got a mustache as well.
Oh, I
And yeah, anyway. So that was fun. We do have some launch photographs. 1 second. Here we go. Night launch.
Fun fact, we were talking about this the other night, and I was looking it up afterwards. Turns out this was only the second night launch of the shuttle program ever. It took over 20 missions to get to get 2 night launches. The first one
Wow.
was STS-8.
Yeah, we're talking about Starship, the first night launch of Starship, and we were referencing back because remember the first launch of SLS, Artemis, was a night launch. Much to disgust of some photographers, but I thought it's still visually stunning.
Yeah, it was. I liked the original August daytime launch better, but plan.
But
That's another
look
story.
at
Back to
this
shuttle.
reflection
Wow.
shot. That is beautiful. 2 shuttles in one shot. One there, one there. There we go. They go, Chris. That's really technical of you, Chris. I go, yeah, one there, one there.
Also, I noticed something is still there.
The crane.
The crane.
Yeah. Imagine if Jack was busy for the Shuttle Sunday where the crane was removed. He'd be like, no, I missed it. I wanted to see what happened. There we go. And by the way, you can actually see the lightning protection lines there, which is very, very see, but you do see it on a night launch because it lights the whole area up. If you watch any launch from any pad at KSC or Cape, you will see them riding through a bunch of cables and people going, whoa, what's all the cables about? They're the cables that are attached to the towers, which are the lightning protection system. So those cables are like a cage almost of protection for when there's a lightning strike at the pad. Doesn't always work, but it often does. Nice. Personal photograph almost, because it looks like that. You can see the difference there. That's been scanned from a photograph. That's where you can tell. But also, it's very important to have these documented and saved for history. And this one as well. So it's not the best photograph in the world, but it's important that it's not lost forever. So it's in someone's loft in a photograph. It's been scanned, and we've got it. So that's important to have.
And this was the fastest turnaround time in the space shuttle program, by the way, for Atlantis and for any orbiter for that matter. It landed October 7th, returned back to KSC October 12th, and you could see it flying here in November.
You know why, actually, so I have an official NASA release from the time why that was the case.
For November 27th on the launch. Why?
Because Atlantis special. There we go. Thank you.
Just because Atlantis.
Yeah, basically. No, it's official press release. It's because Atlantis special. I know that seems legit. Right.
Reading through it, I don't see that line here, huh?
I've got it. I'll put it on. Oh, I can't put it on screen. That's unfortunate. Oh, no. Right, we have a lot of mission photographs because a lot was going on with this mission. So we're going to go through these at some pace. Here we go. First of all, they're all out of order, so bear with me. That looks like Dan working on one of our Starbase control panels. It's a nice, friendly photograph. Still the blue flight suits, by the way. Yeah.
Yep.
We're getting closer and closer to that. That's a cool photograph in the airlock. Because remember, you see spacewalks from the ISS in the Quest airlock, and it's a tight fit, but it looks like a proper airlock. The airlock for the space shuttle was obviously very tight. Look at this. I mean, they are literally just packed in there.
Yeah, there wasn't that much room for it, but you see him squeezed in there.
Gwen says, Chris is correct. I saw the NASA release too. Thank you, Gwen.
Oh, come on. I'm
That's out
reading through the release right now. Nowhere does it say that.
Can
It
you
doesn't
imagine
say what the
NASA
best
writing
shuttle
that in
is
a
'cause
release?
It hasn't been built yet.
You love your endeavor.
I
There's the actual hatch as well. That's kind of cool. Thumbs up. Double thumbs up. Even better than a thumbs up. It's a double thumbs up. There's a crew. Now,
Oh, they're all right side up.
we're getting into the photographs of what they were doing on this mission, which was kind of like, it looks like they're almost having fun and there's no real purpose to it. But if you think about it, the EVAs I was just referencing there from the ISS, a lot of the capabilities and techniques and assembly techniques and the nuts and bolts and the pistol grip tool work and what have you all came from the Space Shuttle program's history. It really did. It was a massively important knowledge gaining exercise during the Space Shuttle program that we then saw implemented on the ISS. It's not something they just basically worked out as they built the ISS. A lot of this is from these missions.
Yeah, but ask Jerry Ross. It wasn't fun, so to speak. It was quite difficult.
Yeah. I think we'll get some of that in the video, by the way. Here we go. Look at this. Basically building a big pylon thing out of the back of the space shuttle.
Yep, there was ease and access, which of course were both acronyms. Also, just ease of access for that.
This is surreal. It almost looks like it's in a. I don't know. Trigger the weird people who think the ISS is the studio on the ground because the Earth's flat. But it does look like it's filmed in the studio almost because it's just surreal lighting. But that is in orbit, and you can see on the end of the remote manipulator system. I can never say that word.
Yep, you've got the two different ones, by the way, were the experimental assembly of structures and extravehicular activity, EASE, and then access, which was the assembly concept for construction of erectable space structures.
Nice.
And that one, I believe, is EASE that we see here.
Loads of cool photographs. I actually had a lot more, but I thought I'll just download a selection because they are kind of cool. So I thought I'd do more than I would normally do.
And also, there were not really tools used. These were kind of like Lincoln Logs, basically. They snapped into place. And that one, I believe, is Access that you see there, the longer one.
Lincoln Logs. Is that Lego?
That must be an American thing.
It must be an American thing. Yeah,
They're
Lincoln
logs
Logs.
that they were these little plastic toy logs that you can make like log cabins out of that had a little notch in them. And those notches
Mm,
connected, and that's how they attached. That's what this
uh,
one is too. They kind of just clicked into place.
I shall
So
be Googling
Lego-esque.
that. Yeah, I shall be Googling that after the show. Oh, and it wouldn't be a shuttle mission without a burner satellite launch out the back of it.
We had
Which satellite
3.
was this, Sawyer?
Well, there were 3 satellite launches.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So the first one, let me pull back up the press release here. You had, where did it go? There we go. For some reason, it's listed as a Microsoft Word document, but there it is. You have Morelos B, which was a communication satellite, I believe for Mexico. You had AusSat-2, which, as we saw with the Kangaroo, is for Australia. And then Satcom K2 built for RCA, which introduced a brand new motor, too.
Hmm, very
That
nice.
was the, all of them had the PAM-D, except for the RCA one, which had a PAM-D2.
I think I was quite lazy in only downloading the one photograph of the satellite. There we go.
Yeah.
That's what. Oh, never mind. But that's cool. That's lots of mission photographs, and then, of course, landing photographs before I get to the video. A couple of nice photographs here. Really nice lighting again. Again, the size of the orbiter. I think people don't appreciate it. It looks like people think it's like a small jet because it's that kind of shape, but it's actually really large. Crew getting off. Nice photograph pre-landing there. And that is my favourite photograph. That nearly became the thumb, but I thought we'll do 61A, 61's thumbnails for that one because it was Challengers, remarking on Challengers final. Successful flights. That's why this one did become the thumb. Otherwise, it would have, because that is a beautiful shot of
So
Atlantis.
classic. And how clean the underside is still, too, after only 2 flights.
You know
Look at that
why?
heat shield.
Do you know why, Sawyer?
Why?
Special.
Oh my god.
Video time. Hang on. This is where I remember it every single time.
Like
Here we go.
Okay, looks like the film started all right. That was one of the crew pictures we took that kind of said what everybody was going to do on the mission, pretty much. You can only show leaving the crew quarters so many times and get something new out of it, and there's nothing new here except the sun was going down by the time we got out of there, because we were going to launch at 7:30 in the evening down there at the Cape. It was a great day, beautiful, clear sky, and by the time we got ready for launch, though, it was pretty dark. So it makes things like the engine light-off sequence pretty spectacular to see it at the night. The engines worked fine, and the orbiter worked fine, and we went right down through the count very clean, and at...
Right, bear with me. That's probably me. So, 1 second, I'm going to try and play this video again. Let me close a few things because I think my laptop might be overheating. Here we go. Right, let's try that again, shall we? 1 second. I'm waiting for Jay to give me the permission to go for this one. And then we'll replay the video. Yep, there's definitely something going wacky there. Yeah, 1 second. Jay is going to do his thing where I say, Jay, can you fix it? Fix it. And then we'll try that video again. Because these are all videos, by the way, so you can expect some like dodgy audio and occasional like weirdness going on, because I think they've been recorded from VHS originally. Here we go. Let's try that again. I'm going to have to mute and tell me in chat if this all works now.
Okay, looks like the film started all right. That was one of the crew pictures we took that kind of said what everybody was going to do on the mission, pretty much. You can only show leaving the crew quarters so many times and get something new out of it, and there's nothing new here except the sun was going down by the time we got out of there, because we were going to launch at 7:30 in the evening down there at the Cape. It was a great day, beautiful, clear sky, and by the time we got ready for launch, though, it was pretty dark. So it makes things like the engine light-off sequence pretty spectacular to see it at the night. The engines worked fine, and the orbiter worked fine, and we went right down through the count very clean, and at 29 minutes after 7 in the evening, those solids lit, and we left. It was a pretty spectacular sight, we're told. People saw it as far north as Carolinas and all the way down the south end of Florida and beyond. It was a great ride from where we were sitting. There was a lot of light. We were immersed in a field of light all the way through ascent up till we got off the tank after a main engine cut off. But gee, it was a real nice ride, smooth ride once you got off the solids, and just a real nice push all the way up to MECO. Brian, why don't you tell them about the rest of it?
Well, not only was it bright inside the cockpit, but these people who were about 3 miles away had all their faces lit up. It looked like we were headed towards the moon, and that's what it looked like to us as well in the cockpit. For about 3 minutes or so, every time I'd look up, I'd see the moon right in the center of my front window. We couldn't see any stars or the horizon, though, because of the glow all around the cockpit from the big fire behind us. We're coming up on solid rocket booster separation here. This is my first flight. I don't know what it looks or feels like in the daytime, but at night it was spectacular. A great big orange flame enveloped the whole front end of the vehicle when the solids separated. Of course, the G level went down from about 2.5 Gs to 1 G, and then from then on it was one continuous long push all the way to orbit. The first daytime scene that we saw once we got on orbit and came out of the Terminator here was Northwest Australia. Became pretty familiar with Australia. We saw it every day during the morning passes. Although this picture was shot a little later in the mission, it does show you what the cockpit arrangement was like. Of course, we had changed clothes after ascent and got down to business here. We were checking out instruments. In this particular case, the instruments in the front part of the cockpit.
Satellite when it fires its kick motor. Here we can see the left OMS engine burn, and that's just the startup. The burn lasts for a little while, and this is what it looks like in the middeck. Jerry made it right into the airlock, and we collected all those pieces.
The McDonnell Douglas electrophoresis work on this flight involved this large cabinet of apparatus, including the separation chamber itself, purifying pharmaceutical or medical materials. Our material that we are interested in as our first commercial material is called erythropoietin, a drug that we hope to have available for use to fight anemia, among other illnesses. Extraction of a sample of the purified portion of that material could be done via a syringe, as you see me doing here. I could then use that syringe in a small chemistry set type arrangement of equipment to verify the purity of that material being separated in the device in front of me in this picture.
This is Jerry and I discussing the next day's plans to go EVA or take our spacewalk. We had done a lot of water tank work, and we did a lot more talking on orbit before we went out.
One of the Mexican experiments consisted in observing the way that plants transport their nutrients. And I used bromophenol blue dye on the leaf of each plant and a safranin dye on the root of the same plant, letting both dyes to be absorbed by each plant and then cutting the stems into different segments to be analyzed further in Mexico City by the PIs who proposed these from the National University of Mexico.
Middeck gets pretty crowded when we have the third EMU out there in the middeck and both of us are trying to get into our suits. It's a lot easier, I think, to get into the suits in 0G than it was in 1G. You can see me entering the end of the hatch there, going into the airlock, and Woody is to follow here. And Brian was our IVA aide-de-camp helping us get suited up, and he did a super job. You can see us squirming, trying to get up into our hard upper torsals, which formed the upper half of our suits. The first time we got in the suits, it was a pretty tight fit, but by the time we got them into them on the second EVA, it was a much smoother ingress into the suits. I think partially because we had press fit them to our form on the first EVA. This is Brewster in the aft flight deck. He was keeping a close eye on us at all times. Besides operating the cameras, he was making sure that we weren't going to get into any trouble. Crew of the rest of the crew, and we put up our advertisement after we'd completed the construction of the first access truss. Our motto is we'll build a suit anywhere, and we'd be happy to do that again anytime.
As you can see here, I was flying the arm, looking in the upper overhead window. You can sort of see Jerry doing his Superman imitation there. After working a lot of hours in a simulator flying Captain Cardboard around, it was really a treat to be able to give these guys a ride, and they were real cooperative, giving me great GCAs. Here you can see them saluting the flag up on the MFR, which was really fun to see. Here, Jerry is demonstrating running a cable, like if you were going to run an electrical cable in a space station. I just took him straight up the structure and straight down again. We did notice a couple inches drift at that point in time. I'll tell you, before I was taking these guys out, and here they're doing a Build-A-Bay 10, it was really funny. They sat down in the airlock for about 40 minutes and just really pumped me up, talking about what a great guy I was, until I got them flailing around on the end of the arm, and it was really a good time. The arm flies wonderfully. It's just such a great tool. Real smooth, and no surprises. And the most amazing thing for me was watching him pick up this thing, which was the equivalent of a 4-story building, this truss, access truss, and just twirl it around with very little effort, and it imparted very little motion into the arm. I expected more arm dynamics, and we didn't get it. So all in all, it was a lot of fun being able to interact with them, and they gave me some real good directions while we were up there.
Well, this next sequence was a set of special filming that was done for data collection on the construction of the EASE hardware. This was shot at 6 frames per second, and we're showing it to you at 24 frames per second, so that accounts for the slightly Keystone Cop effect that you're seeing. The person that was working in the foot restraint, in this case it happens to be Woody, had a pretty good workstation, and even though he was very busy, he felt fairly comfortable with his work. I was free-floating for this build, and as you'll see, we'll both go up and...
I think the video's frozen again. We're doing so well there. I was literally watching the feed because we got into the part where they were actually doing a time-lapse, and I was joking about Elisar doing his time-lapse again. There we go. We're into the time-lapse thing again. Let's see if we can get this back. Here we go. 1 second.
24 frames to 0.
Yeah. Let me go back a little bit because you missed that bit there. Here we go. Right, so hopefully this will work again. Now, 1 second. Let's press play and hope for the best.
Sequence was a set of special filming that was done for data collection on the construction of the EASE hardware. This was shot at 6 frames per second, and we're showing it to you at 24 frames per second, so that accounts for the slightly Keystone Cop effect that you're seeing. The person that was working in the foot restraint, in this case it happens to be Woody, had a pretty good workstation, and even though he was very busy, he felt fairly comfortable with his work. I was free-floating for this build, and as you'll see, we'll both go up and take the next beam up together. That also seemed fairly comfortable, we thought, being able to have one person on each end of the beam. The beam was controllable, and it wasn't an excessive amount of hand strength required to maintain body position and to align the beam for attachment. By the way, this, I think, was the 8th of the 8 builds we did of EASE on the first of the 2 EVAs, and we were felt pretty well up the learning curve by that time, and I think that accounts for the smoothness with which the assembly went on this particular time.
Relatively smooth.
Relatively smooth. Our hands by this time were getting relatively tired. The suit with a body inside it weighed in the neighborhood of 400 to 450 pounds. The beams each weighed 60 pounds or so. And when you're trying to maintain your body position and still torque those tubes around and then align them and attach them, it gets your hands fatigued rather rapidly. This is probably not the preferred way of assembling a space station. Something more akin to access where the crew members are stationary in foot restraints is preferred. But for certain applications, I think we've demonstrated that crew free-floating, especially if you have a crew member on each end of a beam, is certainly an adequate way to do certain types of construction in limited applications. You can see me kicking my heels together there at the end of the last build.
This shows me starting to pick up these. On the second EVA, we constructed them again, and then we were able to release them and manipulate them. And this shows me manipulating the entire EASE structure. Now that structure weighs about 400 pounds on Earth, and the center of gravity of it is about 6 feet in front of me. Jerry and I both had the opportunity to manipulate this, and again, it was very easy to do. We could just run it end over end from side to side. As long as we kept the rates down fairly slow, it was not a problem at all. After we were done doing this, we were able to reinsert it right into the socket that it came from, which required accuracy down to the centimeter level, and it was not a particular problem. Now, we did run into a problem during the flight in that we could not replace a very simple pit pin, and that gave us about a 30-second consternation. Then we decided to go ahead and move over to the next rack of clusters and just continue on with the EVA. While we were on orbit, we also had another job, which is really not hard at all, and that's to look at the Earth. And that's probably the most fun part of all. This shows us just coming over the Baja and crossing the Baja into mainland Mexico, where Rodolfo was able to take many, many pictures, and he is extremely, and so are all the Earth observation people, pleased with the results. Here he knows he's got another winner. Good pick.
Brian, as they're monitoring the vehicle. This was our first roll maneuver, about Mach 24 times the speed of sound. You can see we rolled up on the wing to about 90 degrees of bank angle. And again, if you look at the bottom of the screen there, you can see that plasma recombination. It was a bright orange glow, just like on a match or in your fireplace. It stuck with us for quite a while.
We see the same view here that you do from 200 miles, only now we're down to 250 or 240,000 feet, and you're still going just as fast as you were. So it looks like you're really screaming and right on top of the clouds. The vehicle knew exactly what to do. It's a great guidance system, and it did everything exactly right all the way down. We had a real smooth ride. We didn't encounter any turbulence in the upper atmosphere. Charlie and Rodolfo enjoyed the ride down. I think it was a very pleasant experience.
When we crossed the west coast, we were at Ventura there, and that's the city you see, Ventura and Oxnard. As we rolled for the last roll maneuver, right at the end of this scene, you can see the clouds as they came up across the mountains and were over the desert area.
As we turn on to final, we could finally see the runway environment at Edwards, and not until we started turning on to final. As we rolled out onto the final approach, there was some clouds in front of us. We have two aim points out there, a nominal and a close-in aim point. We were supposed to be going to the nominal. It was behind the clouds.
I'm not missing this landing part, so we get a little bit of freeze again there. I wonder if I need to go back a little bit just to there and then see if it'll work. 1 second. Let's see if this works again.
Only see the runway environment at Edwards, and not until we started turning on to final. As we rolled out onto the final approach, there was some clouds in front of us. We have two aim points out there, a nominal and a close-in aim point. We were supposed to be going to the nominal. It was behind the clouds. We could only see a little bit of the close-in aim point. But the heads-up display showed us that our navigation and guidance systems were doing very well, and so we could use them to point ourselves at the ground until we broke out of the clouds and then could see the aim points underneath. Pre-flare and everything after that went nominally. Brian put the gear down at about 300 feet, right on the money, and the rest of it's history. It's pretty much from here on just like landing any glider or any airplane with the power pulled back. We landed, as you know, on the concrete Edwards 22 runway out there. I guess we were about 2,500 feet down the runway or so, and 190 knots at touchdown, and the rest of the rollout went pretty nominally.
As the nose comes down there, you can see the speed brake is full out. We had very little crosswind and about 5 knots of tailwind on this landing. This is a shot that Jerry got by placing that same camera that he had used up earlier in entry into the side hatch window. And you can see, just as the nose is coming down, how fast it looks like we're going down the runway. It's quite a bit faster than you would see out your window on an airliner. Touchdown is over 200 miles per hour, and at this point, with the nose on the ground, we're about 190 miles per hour. Brewster began braking about 130 miles an hour, and he'll go into that.
It's a nice long runway, so we didn't need to get on the brakes very hard. We didn't put much energy into them, and consequently, when the folks looked at the wheels, brakes, and tires after landing rollout, they were all in pretty good shape. So they were able to tow the vehicle right off the runway and get Edwards back into flying operations as soon as they could. You'll see us come down the steps here, and it's pretty remarkable, I think, how well everyone looks. Everybody's in really good shape. We all felt real good getting back into 1G. Didn't have any adverse conditions from the 7 days in 0G, and everybody was pretty excited and real pleased with the way the whole thing had gone.
There we go. And that was a great video, even with some like pausing. I don't know why my video pauses slightly. I mean, my Commodore 64 has always played videos pretty well. I'm quite surprised, it would have any trouble with playing these videos.
I'm glad you upgraded
Anyway.
to the Apple II.
Oh, you never know. I want a Commodore Amiga, to be fair. That's when things will get really sporty. Commodore Amiga, please.
I love that window shot, by the way. Just seeing how fast it really is compared to an airliner. That I hadn't seen that shot before. I love it.
Yeah, poor old Jay in the back is wondering what computers I'm talking about. That shows our age, doesn't it? Where he doesn't
Yeah, it
even know
does.
what them computers are. He's never had the joy of pressing play on tape.
Oh gosh.
Anyway, moving quickly
And
on. I just want
it's
to
better
thank.
than one of the experiments on an upcoming mission that was to test radiation effects on floppy disks. So
Oh, really? There
yeah,
we go.
that one's
Something
coming
to
up.
look forward to. Let's put the old title screen back in because we've completed all our resources there. I want to thank RC Horseman, gifted 5 rating memberships just now. I thought that was really nice of you to do that on Space Coast Live because you are regular on Starbase Live. And just to pop in here to do this for a Shuttle Sunday is very nice and very much appreciated from you. And the 5 people who got gifted membership, please say thank you in chat because it's very nice to say that. While chat now just goes through all their old computers, including Kevin Michael Reed. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
By
A
the way,
couple of questions.
another fun thing that they tested on this mission that we didn't really get to see them do is essentially an autopilot type test. Uh, it's a way, not so much the landing part itself, but while I was in space to be able to use just, say, the front thrusters, just the rear thrusters, to attempt a station keep. So basically, what they now are able to do with the International Space Station. This was part of that precursor testing of being able to, hey, let's see if we can keep a station, if we can fire it using certain thrusters. Same thing we've seen with other vehicles where, say, they only want to fire certain thrusters because others may not be working or leaking or, Starliner.
Absolutely. A couple of questions before we end the show because these are quite good questions. James Haig asks, have the EVA guys ever dropped anything by accident and it's floated away? Yes. We've had tool bags go into space. Was it Stephanie Heidi who dropped the tool bag and was absolutely mortified over the loop live on NAS TV about dropping it? It can happen. We've had many nuts and bolts loose, and the fun thing is the Russian EVAs do it on purpose. They literally throw away their cloths and things like that. They literally just retrograde, throw them away off the ISS. And old experiments, they won't bring them back into the airlock. They'll just throw them off the ISS.
Yeah,
What do
I
you
mean,
mean?
there was a recent one. I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was just last year. Jasmine Mugbelly, I think it was, that accidentally dropped it.
Deary me. 20-minute event. Should they return segments of the ISS and place them to museum before they're decommissioned? No. It's very, very hard to do. We only even discussed, and it was an Elon answer, so it was only a yes, and it was only probably just him saying yes anyway because he liked the idea of it, of Starship and the Chomper system being used to retrieve Hubble and bringing it back to a museum. That would be very nice if that could be done, but also very iffy if it will ever be done, especially when they won't even let Jared Isaacman go and do a Hubble service boost, Hubble service mission style boost of the orbit. They won't even let Jared do that, so I can't imagine them saying yes to bringing it back on a Starship because I think just they're not thinking that way. The ISS modules just that brings it even harder because you're gonna have to basically separate the modules, and then you've got problems with that. And then you got to retrieve it. I don't think it'll ever happen. I like the idea of it, but no, I don't think it will ever happen.
Plus, when they're doing all the calculations for deorbiting and everything, they're trying to
Yeah.
deal with the mass, the center of gravity, all of that. You're accounting for the station as opposed to removing modules.
I'd like them to pop the cupola module off, pop the windows off, and then just basically bring that back. But the problem with that module is the same as what Sawyer was saying. The entire mass of the ISS has been calculated now for what will be the destructive deorbit for a targeted re-entry, and it's going to be very difficult to get it right. So they don't want to start messing around with the mass. They'll have their calculations, and they're going to have to work this out properly because this is bigger than Mir coming back, and Mir was a massive event coming back for re-entry. And this ISS return will be dramatic and sad. So I think, unfortunately, we know the fate of the ISS and its modules, and it's a destructive re-entry. Oh, sad. Not to end Shuttle Sunday on that bombshell, but that is the end of Shuttle Sunday for this one. We've got another one coming up in a few weeks' time with continuing our coverage of the shuttle missions. We're still very early in the shuttle history. We're still in the 80s, so yeah, we're still going through this. But thank you for your expert knowledge, Sawyer, as always.
You're welcome. Fine, we can end on something a little happier then. You heard them kind of talking about the medicines that they were testing. There was one medicine that they tested. You may not have heard of it now, but to see how it works to help astronauts in space and see how well it absorbs in microgravity, it's this thing called Tylenol. So anyone who takes Tylenol, paracetamol, acetaminophen for your pain, thank NASA. They help improve how it's absorbed.
No, Sawyer.
Yeah.
Thanks Shuttle Atlantis.
I'm going to thank the people that were on board one of NASA's Space Transportation System vehicles.
Which orbiter was it, Sawyer? Come on now. So anyone with a headache and takes painkillers for their headache can thank Shuttle Atlantis for the development of the modification. Thank you very much, Sawyer. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, the absorption.
All right, I'll give it that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, though.
Everyone's in now with their own favourite shuttle. Oh dear, including someone called Deep Pod Dolphin. Oh, that's Ryan's silly username. There we go. Thank you very much. So, anyway, look, long-winded. We do an hour show, and it always goes well over an hour, but that's fine because it's short. It's fun. Obviously, we have lots of streams coming up yet to come. Not least from Starbase, because we expect now the fully stacked Booster 12 and Ship 30 combination to be undergoing a wet dress rehearsal of some sort. It might be a mini wet dress rehearsal because there's been no evac notice yet, which is what they need for a full wet dress rehearsal. And then some staring at the FAA to see if they'll approve a launch this month, which potential, but again, it's down to the FAA approving the launch. We've also got the Hera launch from hopefully tomorrow from Florida. What is weather still okay for Monday, Sawyer?
15% go.
Oh dear. Oh well. So you're telling me there's a chance?
It's not zero, but it's not great.
Oh dear. Well, we'll be covering that live if we get a chance of getting a countdown for that one as well. So until those coverage and the next Shuttle Sunday, thank you all for joining us. A lot of people are in this. The video will be recorded and uploaded onto our channel later on today. But until next time, thanks for joining us and goodbye.